Hello viewers, and welcome to yet another commentated match of Warhammer 40,000 Conquest. My name is Mitch, and I am the Hive Tyrant. Today I'm going to be commentating over a pre-recorded game that I played against Alexander Bosch, the same gentleman whom was courteous and skillful enough to produce the new animated Hive Tyrant intro. And what's particularly special about this match today is that it's the very first time that I've actually taken advantage of the opportunity to play our newest Tyranid faction myself. So therefore, I just want to take a moment to preface this video by saying, although at this point I've created well over 100 different videos and interviewed what feels like innumerable tournament champions, my personal estimated total number of matches played still remains somewhere around 20. So, while I frequently talk to the experts and feel like I do have rather strong competitive potential, I'm still missing an underlying understanding of a great many basic and fundamental elements of gameplay that would certainly stand to make me a much more competent player. And in this video in particular, I certainly hope you excuse some, in all honesty, frankly embarrassing mistakes. So I definitely make more than my fair share of suboptimal plays, but for that very reason, I wanted to ensure I didn't scrap this recording, and instead ask that you please leave comments, constructively criticizing and making suggestions for how I could improve, because with your assistance, whether it's with our new Tyranid faction or any other, hopefully someday I can indeed reach the level of skill and experience required to become a truly formidable and masterful tournament player. So, if you enjoy this video and would like to see me play out and commentate more matches of my own, be sure to let me know in a comment. But in any case, let's get our video started with a match between myself as the Swarmlord and Alexander Bosch as Commander Shadowsun. Alright, thank you very much for joining me today to bear witness to the very first time that I've actually taken advantage of the opportunity to test out and try our new Tyranid faction for myself. And of our two warlord options, the Swarmlord is, per general community consensus, agreed upon to be the more difficult, albeit more competitive of the two. So I figured why not make this ordeal as difficult as possible for myself, and of course record the game, capture it on video for your viewing entertainment. I happened to mulligan my opening hand of cards, just because I was essentially clogged with supports and attachments and anything but command icon laden army units, but at the present moment I've definitely got some pretty powerful combat options in those two volatile pyrovores, and given that our planet layout very much favors an aggressive game because we happen to see strong point planet type icons on our first 4 planets, I figure even though I'm stuck with this hand, I'm relatively happy with it regardless. So I've got the Stalking Lictor as my chosen synapse unit, and I'm just going to try to distribute my command icons as interspersed about the battlefield as possible, just so that I can hopefully draw into a bunch of cards that happen to be low-cost command units. In this deck, I've got 3 copies of Promotion, I've got 3 Ripper Swarms, 3 Termagant Sentries, so I've certainly got myriad affordable command icon possessing options. I just need to draw into some of those. I'm up against Commander Shadowsun, played by Alexander Bosch, the gentleman who is kind and skillful enough to create the new, excellent animated Hive Tyrant intros. He's got the initiative token, and his very first deployment happens to be a Blood Angels Veterans put out to our first planet. In assessing our planet layout, planet number 1 is Iridial, which heals damage. Planet 2 is Barless, which is the random card discard planet. Planet 3 is Yavvarn, which puts units into play directly into one's HQ, and planet number 4 happens to be Planum, which moves non-warlord units from planet to planet. And our 5th planet happens to be Elowith, which has the ability to effectively tutor the top 3 cards of your deck. So this is a deck that runs 3 copies of Clogged with Corpses. I don't think that's tremendously useful against Commander Shadowsun, but what is going to become abundantly clear a little bit later into this video is it's probably going to be a good idea running up against Shadowsun to hold on to at least 1 copy of that event, just in case an untimely ambush platform ends up being put into play. I happen to put out a copy of the Volatile Pyrovore to planet number 2. It's got a command icon. I'm at this moment thinking that I need not really press the offensive. I can afford to forego a victory at that first planet. The battle ability isn't anything appealing or repetitive, so I figure I'll just play it safe. I'll play a little bit of a longer game with the Swarmlord and hopefully achieve some sort of early game economic lead, draw into a lot of those command icon possessing units, and then slowly but surely win out in the long game against my opponent. But we happen to see a copy of Pathfinder She Orace put to the 3rd planet, and what's interesting is that in as little as 2 plays, my opponent is already down to 1 resource, albeit with 5 cards still remaining in hand. I've got 3 resources left for myself. I've got a Scything Hormigaunt, I've got that Termagant Horde, I've got a Volatile Pyrovore, and those are really my only appealing options at the moment. Given that Commander Shadowsun creates such a difficult problem for a prospective Tyranid to try to overcome in being able to put attachments into play for free onto whatever unit she chooses to do that to, I wanted to try and kill off this Pathfinder as soon as I could. It's a unique unit. I figured he wouldn't have many copies in his deck, maybe 2 at most, but given that it can discard attachments to ready itself after attacking with Shadowsun Stealth Cadre or Ion Rifle or any number of other effects, that's just potentially incredibly nasty, and I wanted to get rid of it as early as possible, so I'm immediately thinking I can send my Swarmlord to planet number 3, I can potentially kill off the Pathfinder, and then I'll hopefully draw into some shield cards, my Swarmlord won't be outright bloodied, and then so long as I take no more than just a few points of damage, I can essentially keep sprinkling those Termagant tokens distributed throughout the board, and of course hang on to that Strangler Brood for just as long as possible so that I can put it out at perhaps the most influential planet of the game. So I'm picking planet number 3 for my Swarmlord, and I'm thinking about planet number 5 for my Stalking Lictor. I suppose I might ultimately go with planet number 4. I was just a little bit torn between do I want to just reel in a bunch of cards, or do I also want to start gaining some resources, just because in my hand, for units that I'd like to play, I would need at least 5 resources to get out that Hormagaunts and the Horde. So Swarmlord goes to planet number 3, the Stalking Lictor ends up going to planet number 4. Something that I struggle with a little bit over the course of this video is just remembering that Commander Shadowsun can dump attachments into play, especially for whatever reason. I always seem to space the fact that Commander Shadowsun can recur cards from her discard pile, but of course at the present moment there are no cards in her discard pile, but to my dismay we see a Shadowsun Stealth Cadre affixed to that copy of Pathfinder She Orace there. The initiative token happens to be in the hands of my opponent, so I wasn't really sure what to do at the beginning of the game, but I just figured I didn't want that Pathfinder to snowball out of control. I didn't have a copy of Indescribable Horror. There's nothing the Tyranid players have along the lines of the Fury of Sicarius or Klavex Warleader, so I wanted to get rid of that threat before it really blossomed into something overwhelming and deadly. And at the present moment, I'm just thinking, okay, it attacks for 5, but the Swarmlord has 6 hit points, I'm okay with that. So I just want to kill off that unit. And of course, the nice thing about the Pyrovore is it can potentially attack for 3. If it's destroyed by an attack, that's another 3 points of damage. And I'm going to go into combat wanting to deal as much damage to the Pathfinder so that if at any point it ultimately exhausts itself, it will end up being killed. Like if it has 3 points of damage, if it discards the Shadowsun Stealth Cadre attachment, it'll immediately die. But in regard to the command phase, I get 3 cards and 1 resource, whereas my opponent gets 1 card, 0 resources. So in just having kind of a dearth, complete lack of early game command units, even though I was very similar, I was able to take advantage of that stalking lictor, kind of play my units throughout the battlefield, distribute them a little bit, and ultimately do ever so slightly better than my opponent does. I happen to mention that I'm essentially okay with just getting rid of Iridial. I believe this happens to be one of Alexander's first times, or his very first time, actually playing through Octagon. I believe he'd played Android Netrunner via Octagon before, so there's a little bit of a delay in figuring out how to capture planets, how to use arrows, things like that. But the Blood Angels Veterans is returned to his HQ. He has no units that need healing, so that battle ability does absolutely nothing for him, and now we're going to see battle take place at planet number 3. I didn't really draw anything too terribly exciting during the command phase. I've got a copy of Spore Burst, which is 2 shields. I've also got a Clogged with Corpses that at the moment I'm not thinking is going to be particularly valuable, just because On Shi happens to be the Tau Warlord that plays just a wealth of supports. So combat is about to break out. The Swarmlord is basically guaranteed to survive 1 attack, and even the odds or anything along those lines wouldn't be able to destroy me. A squadron redeployment couldn't really threaten me, but we see just the very first attack here, somewhat to my surprise. The volatile Pyrovore is going to be outright killed by an attack of 5 from the Pathfinder Shi Orace there. It's going to take 3 points of damage in return, which I'd have loved, because then it couldn't have discarded that copy of the Stealth Cadre, but we saw an Ion Rifle discarded, so it's only going to be 2 points of damage dealt. And at the present moment, I'm kind of stuck with a difficult decision here. I'm trying to think, I really want to get rid of this Pathfinder. I want to make sure that it's not going to be able to ready in order to attack twice during some upcoming game round. I'm pretty much convinced that I'm not going to be able to win this combat. I don't have any sort of devious tricks with which to use in my advantage, but I want to be able to deal out some damage here, and at the very least, accumulate some tokens on that Pathfinder. So Commander Shadowsun takes a swing for a grand total of 1 point of damage on the Swarmlord, and I'm just trying to think, do I want to take this damage, or do I want to allow it to go through? Ultimately, I do decide that I want to allow that 1 point of damage onto the Swarmlord, and now a new combat round is about to begin, but of course I'm going to be retreating with my Swarmlord. I'm not terribly excited to take a swing of 5, potentially risk, my Swarmlord being nearly bloodied. I could have stayed, and I could have taken that swing, used the Spore Burst to absorb that attack, but I was thinking that given that I have that Scything Hormagaunts, given that I'll have the initiative token next round, I could simply use that Spore Burst in order to return that volatile Pyrovore into play. So I certainly could have stayed at that planet and killed off the Pathfinder in all likelihood, but I feel that the cost would have been a little bit of an unnecessary risk. But that's going to be a battle ability won by Commander Shadowsun. She wins at that planet, but does not trigger Yvonne's battle ability, and our new 5th planet is going to be Atrox Prime, which can ping an adjacent planet or a target headquarters for 1 point of damage. Each player gets 4 resources and 2 cards, and I ended up drawing something very nice to see, and something that I could have waited until much later in the game to see. I got a copy of the Ripper Swarm, Swarm. It's 0 cost. It's a command icon. That's going to be fantastic in just really playing that command game, but given that it's limited, given that I already happen to have had a copy of Ripper Swarm drawn during the previous round's command phase, there's a little bit of a redundancy there, but given that I want to try to, win over a longer game than if I were playing Old One-Eye, I'm okay in seeing that unit, and I put out that Ripper Swarm to Aatrox Prime just because I want a balance of cards and resources, and also because if I'd have sent it to Eloith, I'd have risked it being blown up by Aatrox Prime if Commander Shadowsun would have gone there. So at the present moment, I've got that planet number 1 is looking reasonably safe. My opponent put a copy of White Scar's Bikers onto Planum, and at the present moment, his victory condition is going to be Yvarn, so at some point, I'm going to need to overcome his Pathfinder at that planet. And I'm thinking, what do I want to do? I've got this copy of the Scything Hormagaunts, which I can put out into play at planet number 2, infest that planet, and subsequently play Spore Burst to return that Volatile Pyrovore from my discard pile into play at that planet. If I send my Swarmlord there, I'll not only generate Termagant tokens at planet 1, which reinforces that, the token's ready to take a swing, but also at planet number 3, where I've got that White Scar's Biker here. So whether or not I end up winning planet number 1, I'm just trying to think to myself, where should I send my Warlord? Where should I send my Synapse units? We end up seeing something very kind of nasty here. My opponent puts out a copy of Shadowsun's Stealth Cadre, and another thing that really holds me back in this game is, although I think about where Commander Shadowsun is going to be sending herself, I don't really take into account when she shows up, she'll be triggering that reaction. What are the different options? How would the combat math change if all of a sudden she put into play, say, a third copy of Shadowsun Stealth Cadre, or an Ion Rifle, or a Gun Drones gets put into play by an ambush platform? Different effects like that, once again, hold me back. But I do that Spore Burst Infestation token combo. I've now got that Volatile Pyrovore, but the Pathfinder happens to be a 7 hit point, 7 attack unit. I don't have a copy of No Mercy. I've got 3 of them in this deck, and that could have potentially been a fantastic opportunity to attack first, kill off the Pathfinder, and then get rid of those 2 signature army units that could be recurred as attachments. Wherever Shadowsun goes, she'll be bringing that Blood Angels Veterans along with her, and then in regard to my Synapse unit, I could send it to planet number 4, pick up some additional cards, or I could send it to planet number 5, like I choose to do so, in order to settle for 1 card, 1 resource, but also prevent my opponent from getting that. So it's looking like I'm presuming Commander Shadowsun is going to go to planet number 2, and I'm just hoping that I'll have kind of enough combat units present at that planet. I frankly wasn't sure if Shadowsun would go to planet 1 or 2, but given that the veterans would be arriving exhausted, I suppose 1 wasn't looking like a terrific choice for him. But in taking a look here, both of our Warlords are going to be going to planet number 2, and my Lictor goes to planet number 5, so I'm going to do relatively well during the command phase once again, and hopefully if I survive to the next turn, I'll be able to keep on putting out low-cost units to generate more of a just economic disparity between the two of us. We see Commander Shadowsun's ability put a Ion Rifle into play on the Pathfinder She Orace, and this is going to be something that very much results in my making a mistake, because Ion Rifle boosts attack, it does not temporarily boost hit points. So, Pathfinder is attacking for 10 in total, and he has 3 remaining hit points. The initiative token is going to be in my hand, and then in regard to just command, I'm going to be winning at planet 1, planet 2, and planet 5. So if there's anything that I start to do reasonably well in this game, it's really leveraging that Synapse unit in my favor to, I think, trump my opponent's command and just win as many cards and resources as possible. I get a grand total of 3 cards, 2 resources relative to my opponent's single card and single resource. I ended up getting another copy of Clogged with Corpses. I'm kind of feeling frustrated about that at the moment. It's feeling somewhat useless because an enemy that attacks for 10, it's not going to do me any good shielding for 1, but my opponent does nothing at the first planet. I get the opportunity to do a random card discard, and it's going to be just a moment to see what he does discard. It ends up being a recon drone, which I certainly could have, would have liked to see something else, perhaps some sort of powerful army unit discarded, just something that he can't stick attachments onto. But I also happen to draw a copy of Bone Sabers, and given just how hard his Pathfinder's going to potentially be attacking, I was, kind of excited, I suppose, just to have drawn a 3 shield icon card. He's only got 3 cards in hand. I was really hoping he wouldn't be able to shield my Volatile Pyrovore here, but to my dismay, I see a Repulsor Impact Field shed. I suppose result in his Pathfinder only taking a single point of damage. I did not want to retreat with my Swarmlord. I figured if I ended up bloodied, so be it. I just want to get rid of the Pathfinder under any circumstances possible. So, his Pathfinder takes a swing for 10 at my Swarmlord, and as I struggle to figure out how to bloody my Warlord, the Swarmlord, second round of the game, is already bloodied, and if my opponent happens to win this planet, that's going to be another 3 icons contributed to his potentially winning, and this is a bit of a big mistake on my part. Note that my opponent only has 2 cards in hand. I take a swing at his Pathfinder She-Orace, and Alexander and I are both on, not Ventrilo, we're on Skype, and I say, "Excuse me, I want to change my mind. Is it okay if I attack your Blood Angels veterans first?" And here was my thought process. I thought, okay, he's got those 2 copies of the Shadowsun Stealth Cadre. If he discards either one of them in order to ready his Pathfinder, it immediately hits 5 hit points, it's got 5 damage, and it dies. So, since that Blood Angels Veterans is exhausted, it's not going to prevent 1 point of damage, I might as well deal that damage to it. Commander Shadowsun's not going to be able to kill off one of my units by herself, so therefore, since I've still got the initiative token, I'll have an opportunity to attack again, kill off that Pathfinder, and then all of his stuff will get an opportunity to attack. So I thought that that was very smart of me, but of course, my opponent discards the Ion Rifle, and I immediately facepalm and consider hitting the stop recording button. I will not lie to you. So the Pathfinder takes a swing for 7 and obliterates my Scything Hormagaunts. Commander Shadowsun takes a swing. The Volatile Pyrovore is going to end up taking a point of damage, and I'm thinking to myself, do I want to take this or not? I'm going to be able to kill the Pathfinder, most likely, and do I want to show a strong shielding presence just so I can potentially survive 1 attack from the Blood Angels veterans, kill it, and then deal out a bunch of damage to Commander Shadowsun if she stays around to deal with the Volatile Pyrovore, because it could potentially hit her for 3. Its attack, well, its reaction, force, interrupt, whatever it is, will deal 3 points of damage to Shadowsun, so I do get rid of one of my worthless copies of Clogged with Corpses to take care of that effect. So a new combat round begins, neither player opts to retreat, and even though things are looking pretty grim for me, apart from my tremendous blunder, which I am still slapping myself over, I make the kind of curious choice to, I guess, take a swing at the Blood Angels veterans here. I think in hindsight, I'd have used that attack to kill the Pathfinder and then use the Bone Sabers to discard in order to block the damage from the Blood Angels veterans. So I think in hindsight that would have been the better play, but the Pyrovore kills the Blood Angels veterans. The Pyrovore ends up being destroyed by Pathfinder She-Orace, and now he's going to have to deal with that 3 points of damage, which does manage to kill the Pathfinder. Both both copies of that Shadowsun Stealth Cadre end up in the discard pile, and even though Shadowsun only has 2 cards in hand relative to my 8, 1 resource to my 3, I completely space the fact that Commander Shadowsun can recur those, army unit attachment things there. So let me know in the comments. I was thinking I want to hold on to the Bone Sabers to make sure that the Swarmlord doesn't end up being killed, just because I've got a very long game ahead of me, and I know that at my possible victory condition, Planum, I've got that White Scars Biker to deal with that's potentially going to be attacking for 4, so I really wanted to hold on to those shield icons, but it was a little bit tricky there. So the planet ends at the battle ends at Yavvarn. Commander Shadowsun chooses not to trigger that ability, but that's another battle won for our Tau player. Our headquarters phase comes and goes. 4 resources, 2 cards for both players. The initiative token goes to my opponent, Alexander. Our new 5th planet is going to be Taurus, which rewards players for keeping their unit count lower than their opponents. You can draw 3 cards. You can generate 3 resources if you win a battle there. So I've got 7 resources, 10 cards, relative to my opponent's 2 resources and 3 cards. And even though things are looking bad, my instinct as an inexperienced novice player is saying, you should just give up, you're already bloodied, things are looking crappy, the game is going to be very long, why not just forfeit, throw in the towel, stop recording. I think to myself, no, I'm going to play this out, I've got this, huge economy difference, I can potentially do this. So I do a Ripper Swarm to planet number 4. I want to keep drawing cards because I'm not quite getting what I want to see. I really want a copy of Indescribable Horror. I really want some copies of Regeneration. My opponent does a Vashia Trailblazer to planet number 3, opposite my Ripper Swarm there. So he's got the Pathfinder at planet number 1, the initiative token is at planet number 1, and at the present moment my opponent has a red, green, and blue icon. If he wins the battle at the first planet, that's going to put him at 2 icons, 1 of each kind, and then I'm going to have to basically block him at each and every additional planet for the remainder of the entire game. I decide to put a Termagant Horde to planet number 1, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to be a little bit ballsy here. I really want to try to make sure that my opponent doesn't have any momentum whatsoever. I believe at this moment Alexander has passed. He's got 0 resources, 2 cards, and I've still got 4 resources and 8 cards. So I'm thinking to myself, how can I try to leverage all of these cards in my hand to my advantage? Where might Commander Shadowsun go? And again, I have to admit that I'm not thinking, okay, she's going to be probably putting a Shadowsun Stealth Cadre onto one of these units, so it's never going to stop surprising me throughout this video. I contemplate putting my Scything Hormagaunts at planet number 5, but I'm thinking I want to get as much momentum, as many combat units as possible, as just close to the front of the board as is possible, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, if I go with a Planum ultimately for this unit, that's going to be my victory condition. So I do the Scything Hormagaunts at Planum, so that I basically I match my opponent's command, and then I put out, I believe I put out a copy of Promotion, and I believe that was actually an illegal play, so it's very embarrassing to have made a mistake like that in this video, but I do believe that I put out a Ripper Swarm adjacent onto planet Eloith, so that is a limited card, and so, I guess caught red-handed, I accidentally put 2 limited cards into play, so hopefully that's not going to make a tremendous difference as to the outcome of this video. My sincerest apologies, but I did make that mistake and I cannot take it back now. So my Stalking Lictor, I ended up sending it to planet number 5 just to try to continue to win as much command as possible. I guess fortunately for me, my playing the Ripper Swarm at that third planet there didn't actually result in my winning a command, so hopefully my opponent would have put that Trailblazer into play anyways, and my double limited card doesn't affect the outcome of the game. But both players end up sending their Warlords to planet number 1. Unfortunately, my Swarmlord does not generate an additional Termagant token, and again, to my dismay, I have to confess, I'd totally spaced that Commander Shadowsun can draw any attachment from the discard pile or Shadowsun Stealth Cadre, and my opponent decided to snag that copy of Ion Rifle. So my Swarmlord happens to be present at that planet, and I guess that's exactly why I held on to that copy of the Bone Sabers, just because as soon as my opponent gets the opportunity to shoot, I'm not going to be able to potentially kill off that unit with anything of mine. I'll have to use my first combat turn to retreat. So in regard to command, it looks like I just won command on 2 different planets. It's going to be 3 cards, 1 resource for my opponent, 2 cards, 2 resources for me. I was once again really hoping to get Indescribable Horror, but I was not so fortunate. I ended up getting a copy of Termagant Sentry and Predation, a card included in this deck just to make sure that Digestion Pool is up and functional. I don't happen to have any copies of Shrieking Harpy or anything like that. This actually happened to be a deck taken from someone in the card game DB community whom I have nothing but the just utmost respect for, Asclepios, personal hero of mine, I guess you could say, someone tremendously influential in regard to my initially developing an interest in this game, first being exposed to card combos and synergies in the comments section of Card Game DB for each specific card, but my Termagant Horde happens to generate a Termagant token at the beginning of combat, and my signature attachment, the Bone Sabers, ends up being discarded as shields so that the Swarmlord only ultimately takes 3 points of damage from that Ion Rifle attack. And to my dismay, I'm basically left with no other option than to retreat with my Swarmlord, so things are certainly looking very grim indeed for me. My opponent could have easily chosen to discard that copy of the Ion Rifle in his hand, only to attack again and kill my Warlord, but it's now going to be my opportunity to attack. All I've got is my Horde that it swing for 1. I've got a Termagant token that also swings for 1. Commander Shadowsun takes a swing at my ready Termagant token, seeing as how my action was retreating, so the token's going to end up killed. I suppose I was kind of glad to see that the Termagant Horde wasn't ultimately going to be killed itself, and I'm trying to think here, do I want to use a shield card to preserve my Termagant token or not? This Clogged with Corpses, I've not seen an ambush platform yet. I'm not terribly concerned about it. I ultimately decide, okay, fine, I want to do my absolute, most to ensure that this volatile Pyrovore can survive, potentially, as many Shadowsun hits as possible, if I can somehow manage to kill off the Pathfinder. So that was a really difficult decision for me. I don't know if I made the right move or not, but my Termagant Horde deals out a point of damage to that Termagant Sentry, and my opponent discards that copy of Ion Rifle in order to get an attack with the Pathfinder. So he takes a swing, and I guess that was probably my main thought process there, is that if the Pathfinder readies itself, I want to be able to preserve either my Pyrovore or the Sentry, just to have the Hordes, just to have another opportunity to attack. But my opponent actually decides to retreat, and for maybe the first time in my life, I trigger Yvarn's battle ability to put the 10-cost Burrowing Trigon into play, which I thought was actually pretty funny. I was intending to just play it the following turn since I'd have had the initiative token, and be sure to let me know in the comments if that was actually a mistake or not, putting that Burrowing Trigon into play, just because what my opponent ultimately put into play, and granted he had 1 resource left, so this might have worked out in his favor, favor. He put a copy of White Scars Bikers into play, and it's going to just be absolutely crucial that, you know, I potentially win the battle at this next planet. So maybe it was stupid of me in hindsight. Maybe it was an unnecessary gamble to play that Burrowing Trigon just because I could have used all of my resources to put it into play. And, you know, Tau's Deception couldn't have bounced it back to my hand. So maybe that would have, you know, sealed the game early. So I did end up winning that battle at Yvonne. That means I captured the first planets, and now I'm at 2 green strong point icons, so things are still looking pretty grim. My HQ happens to be just absolutely full of units. My Swarmlord only has 2 hit points remaining, but I've got a reasonable combat presence at the first planet here. I guess given my double limited mistake the previous round, let's just pretend that I played that Ripper Swarm this round. I've got 7 resources. My opponent's got now 4 resources. He does an Earthcast Technician to planet number 1, and he's searching his deck for an attachment or drone card. So I'm trying to think, what exactly do I want to do? I've only got a limited number of resources at the present moment. I'd like to put the Brood Warriors out as a command presence. I'd also like to do that Termagant Horde, but I've also got that copy of Strangler Brood, and that's going to be 6 resources altogether, and then that means I'm not going to have enough to put out one of my copies of Toxic Venomthrope in order to trump either his Trailblazer or his Recon Drone, so I'm not sure exactly what I want to see, but he ends up snagging a copy of the Ion Rifle in tutoring the top 6 cards of his deck, thanks to that Earthcast Technician there. So that's going to bounce into his hand. I'm still looking, well, I guess at the present moment, I'm actually looking like I'm doing pretty poorly in regard to command, but I've still got that Stalking Lictor. I could grab myself another couple cards. I could send the Lictor to Aatrox Prime. There's a lot of different options, and I'm certainly thinking I want to draw as many cards as possible, because if I can get that Indescribable Horror, it doesn't matter how incredibly nasty whatever unit is that he puts into play, because I can route it and potentially, you know, steal a victory at the first planet here. So I'm trying to think, do I want to go command, or do I want to just, you know, dump out a bunch of combat units? I'm not really sure how combat at the first planet is going to go. I've certainly got a tremendous number of units to back up some of my soldiers here, and I'm saving my combat unit plays until a little bit later in the round. So I was hoping that I could maybe encourage him to play out some more economy type units so that maybe he runs out of resources to actually play command things. But he puts out a copy of Ambush Platform, and all of a sudden I'm kind of kicking myself for that Clogged with Corpses in my discard pile. That Predation is definitely doing me no good, so it could have been much better to see that removed from play. And I put out a copy of Termagant Hordes, and now I'm starting to feel pretty good about this battle at the first planet here, because that's where I'm going to be sending the Swarmlord, just because I might have the chance to win myself the game. Both of those Termagant Hordes are going to be generating additional Termagant tokens each and every combat round, and since my Burrowing Trigon is going to be showing up, he doesn't have anything tremendously dangerous at the moment, and I'm feeling pretty good about my chances. He doesn't have any area effect or anything nasty like that. I take an opportunity to just kind of shift the first planet over a little bit so it's not tremendously confusing alongside our other planets that are starting to kind of get crowded here. But I've got 2 resources, my opponent has 2 resources, I've got 4 cards, he's got 5 cards. I'm still feeling pretty good in regard to my command presence. I'm trumping him at planet 3, planet 4, I'm intending to trump him at planet number 2, and now I believe my opponent has passed. I put out my Strangler Brood to the first planet, and I'm kind of wishing I had a Termagant Spikers for sure, but all of my Termagant tokens are going to be attacking for an additional 1, and then I just immediately set my Servo Skulls, so a bit of a connection hiccup for my opponent here. And I'm just trying to think, is this going to be the game? So I send Swarmlord to planet number 1. I'm going to have to use my first combat action to get the hell out of there. Fortunate for me, my opponent doesn't actually have any ranged units present at that planet, and I take a moment to kind of nicely arrange all of my units for this big, prolonged, confusing combat here. So I've got my Pyrovore exhausted, I've got 4 Termagant tokens, granted half of them are exhausted, but both of those hordes are going to be generating additional tokens, and given that I've got my Pyrovore, given that I've got that 7/7 Burrowing Trigon, I'm still feeling alright. He's got that 4/3 White Scars Bikers, but that's not the end of the world until, of course, I space that Commander Shadowsun can toss an Ion Rifle into play. So that's why I was kind of thinking, you know, would it have been worth to just put out that Burrowing Trigon naturally so that it could maybe have gotten the first attack based on what I ended up drawing as shields, just because that could have potentially made a big difference here. I really like that I drew a copy of No Mercy. During the command phase there, I just did fantastic. I believe I won command at every single planet, so 5 cards and 3 resources for me. I got a copy of No Mercy, a Spore Burst, so great shielding. No Mercy can cancel an opponent's shield card. My Stalking Lictor is very able of doing that. I used my very first combat action to run my Swarmlord away, and I've now got 6 Termagant tokens present at that planet. So I'm thinking, okay, I've got those hordes, I've got the Stranglers, I've got the Trigon, the Pyrovore, a lot of fantastic targets. It's going to be just a nightmare for him to try and scrape through and win this one. But just to my complete dismay, my complete horror, I see that ambush platform exhaust, and he puts out a copy of the gun drones affixed to the Earthcast Technician. I don't have Indescribable Horror. I don't have anything at all that I can do to try to kill off that unit. So that immediately means I'm going to be taking Area Effect 2 to each and every one of my units here. I've got a single 2 shield icon card in my hand. I've got 2 1 shield icon cards. And just to make this, decision a little bit earlier or easier for myself, I deal out, assign 2 points of damage to all of my units, and then I decide how exactly am I going to get rid of these. I choose to use my Spore Burst, and I'm thinking I want to save my Termagant Horde so that it can hopefully live for as many rounds as possible, and each and every individual point of damage, each and every, additional body is just going to potentially make a big bit of difference. So that horde is going to end up surviving. I drop it down to 2 points of damage here. My opponent has a White Scars Biker that's attacking for 7, but it's got 3 hit points, and very frustrating. I could have potentially saved like my Scything Hormagaunts instead, but 2 attack value is not 3, and therefore I could not have used No Mercy to kill off that White Scars Biker, which could have allowed my Burrowing Trigon to potentially stay in play, to kill off the other White Scars Biker, to kill off the Pathfinder, to just be a tremendous pain in my opponent's ass. So if, there haven't already been enough things to go wrong for me in this game, I was definitely just feeling completely defeated at this point. I use a copy of Predation to negate one of the points of damage assigned to my Scything Hormagaunts there, just because I want something alive to be able to attack. And my Strangler Brood is dead, and now once again things are just looking absolutely awful for the Tyranid player here, but it is going to be my opportunity to attack. I'm trying to think, what exactly do I want to do? Which of these units do I want to attack? Do I want to kill off the Earthcast Technician? Do I want to wound one of those White Scars Bikers? My opponent has 3 cards in hand, and I have just absolutely no idea what he has in regard to shields. But I'm trying to think, I really can't risk that Earthcast Technician being alive. But I guess I decide to be a little bit bold, and I take a swing with my Termagant Horde. I figure it's a high priority target just so we can kill it off. to prevent it from spawning another Termagant token. So in wanting to maximize the number of attacks I get, I take a swing, I take a risk. Maybe my opponent doesn't have any shield cards, and the Earthcast Technician is successfully destroyed. And of course, you know, frustratingly, the White Scars Biker takes a gigantic swing for 7, and that's going to outright destroy my Burrowing Trigon, which would have happened even if it had not been bloodied. I did have that No Mercy, but that's not going to do me much good. Commander Shadowsun could have attacked, and then that would have been absolutely no good either. I take a swing with my Scything Hormagaunts, and for whatever reason, I decide to direct it toward the White Scars Bikers, and I suppose that was just once again kind of relying on, I know I'm going to have the initiative token, I know I'm going to be able to attack again to finish off that unit with or without a copy of No Mercy, so that I need not have killed like the Pathfinder, even though I think that's a more potentially dangerous unit than the Bikers there. So I felt like I could deal with both. Commander Shadowsun takes a swing at my remaining Termagant Horde, and I discard that copy of No Mercy. It's not feeling tremendously useful, and in wanting to get another Termagant token into play, I decide to use that as a shield, spare its life, and then I take a swing at the White Scars Biker there. So my opponent uses a Crushing Blow as a shield in order to basically save its life. So that is going to bring us to an end of this first combat round. All of our units are going to ready, and then let's see if we have any retreats. I decide I'm going to stay at the planet, because if I win this battle, if I somehow manage to pull through, then this, for me, is going to be the game. So I'm very frustrated that I'm out of shield cards. I don't have any events to rely on or anything like that. The initiative token, fortunately, is in my hand, and I'm thinking, okay, I want to, you know, use an attack that I basically want to get as much efficiency out of my units as possible. So that Volatile Pyrovore, I'm thinking I could kill potentially the White Scars Biker that's completely hail. I assume that my opponent has no shield cards at this point, and I'm not exactly sure what convinced me to attack the White Scars Biker that was at 0 damage as opposed to the one that was entirely wounded. I guess I'd been thinking that my opponent had 0 shields, but I think really, because I'm taking a risk no matter what, in regard to not killing off a unit with the attack, I certainly was not expecting the command link drone, so I guess 3 shields nullifying 3 attack doesn't make much of a difference, but I think I should have killed the basically 7 attack White Scars Biker, just because that would have been an essentially guaranteed kill were it not for the command link drone, and then if that White Scars Biker would have wanted to, it could have attacked my Pyrovore and then chanced killing itself. So I think that was a little bit of a suboptimal play there, but the White Scars Biker takes a swing. It kills off something of mine. I believe it was perhaps my 2/1 Scything Hormagaunts, and then we see this White Scars Biker kill off one of my Termagant hordes. It was one of my favorite units when I first opened up the Great Devourer box set, and I think even though I've only had the opportunity to play it this one time, it's just it's a very fun effect, and I think I got a lot of use out of them. But we see more attacks come and go. One of my hordes was killed. A Termagant ends up killing Pathfinder She Orace, and then Commander Shadowsun kills off another one of my Termagants here, and now we're gonna have yet another round of combat. So I'm glad that the horde ended up staying alive. All of our units once again ready, and both of us decide not to retreat, and that means I'm going to see yet another Termagant token generated by my hordes here. So the initiative token once again belongs to me, and I guess the same thing goes as the previous turn. It probably would have been better had I attacked the wounded White Scars Biker. Well, potentially, I guess, I've got so many weak attackers. I suppose at this point I wanted to use the Volatile Pyrovore to have a chance at killing off the full hit point one, so that just like a Termagant token could kill off his normal White Scars Biker here. So I contemplate having the Termagant token for whatever reason attack Commander Shadowsun, but granted that I was on Skype with my opponent, we're both fairly novice level players, he decided to let me, do the, oh god, can I take that back, and shift it to the White Scars Bikers. So the White Scars Bikers, for some reason ended up being destroyed. I believe that maybe only had I think it only had 2 points of damage on it, or maybe that was an erroneous discard. I can't rewind the video to check, but for whatever reason that unit was destroyed, and then I take a swing with my Volatile Pyrovore at Commander Shadowsun. She takes a swing, kills off my Termagant token, and then the Volatile Pyrovore and Commander Shadowsun are going to be left. And even though it's very, very close, if you take a look in my hand here, I don't happen to have any shield cards, so we see a new combat round. That's going to be 3 points of damage dealt out to Commander Shadowsun, and therefore, it's going to be, just my Volatile Pyrovore destroyed. Commander Shadowsun is going to take 3 points of damage from that interrupt, and she's basically going to be bloodied, so no player ends up winning our first planet here, and as this is yet another thing that doesn't occur very frequently, I'm at a little bit of a loss in regard to just how to deal with, a planet that basically just disappears into the nether there. So nobody ended up actually gaining the command icons that were associated with that planet. So Planum, Octagon is not allowing me to discard it, so I basically just deselect it, and we've got our new first planet is now Eloith. So both players generate 4 resources. We each draw 2 cards. My opponent has 6 resources and 3 cards relative to my 8 resources and 7 cards. And now I'm just trying to think, okay, I've only got 1 blue icon. If I win Battle at the First Planet, in the next round I win at Aatrox Prime, that's going to be my victory. My opponent, the same thing goes for him. So it's all about kind of denying and then winning the game. I've got 2 green strongpoint icons, but at this point I can't win the game through strongpoint until our 3rd planet. So I'm quite likely to end up winning before that. The initiative token happens to be in my opponent's hand, and even though he doesn't have very many cards, he ends up putting out a Shadowsun Stealth Cadre to our 2nd planet. I've got a reasonable assortment of just different Tyranid combat units in my hand. I'm just thinking, what exactly do I want to do with these? Do I want to just put out a ton of combat units, really lock down planet number 1, planet number 2? And at this point in the game, I'm now thinking to myself, okay, no matter where Commander Shadowsun goes, she'll be able to affix a copy of Shadowsun Stealth Cadre. So now that I'm finally cognizant of that fact, note that Commander Shadowsun is bloodied and does not actually have her ability anymore. So my Warlord, what kind of stinks is it's attacking for 2, but he's only got 2 hit points. Commander Shadowsun is only a 1/5 when bloodied. And now I'm left with some difficult decisions. Do I want to go command heavy? Do I want to go combat heavy? I decide that I'm going to go a little bit combat heavy. So I'm thinking this Termagant Horde here. It's going to cost me 3. Where do I want to play it? Do I want to go planet number 1, planet number 2? Again, keep in mind, I'm convinced that Commander Shadowsun is going to potentially dump a Stealth Cadre wherever she goes. And of course, that ambush platform could once again be an absolute nightmare for me. So I'm thinking, how can I try to win as much command as possible, hopefully to draw a copy of Indescribable Horror. I've only got 23 cards left in my deck. I've yet to draw it, so I want to be able to put enough army units into play where I can have as daunting a combat presence as possible, but also give myself the best chance at drawing as many cards as I can so that I could potentially end up drawing that unit. The Volatile Pyrovore doesn't necessarily need to be ready in regard to where it's going to end up, so I decide to send it to the first planet. Like, if it can attack, great. If it has to potentially kill off like a 3/3 Vashia Trailblazer. That would be fine. If I win the battle at the first planet and then send it alongside my Warlord to Aatrox Prime, it's still going to be able to trigger that interrupt if it arrives exhausted, so I'm okay with that. Now I'm deciding, what else do I want to play? Do I want to play something? Do I want to save my resources? My opponent, I believe, has at this point passed. So I've got 2 resources, 5 cards. My opponent's got 4 resources, 2 cards. I've still done a decent job in depriving them of command, and I'm thinking that Shadowsun might go to planet number 1 to try to win, but again, I'm picturing Commander Shadowsun as Hail with that ability, so I'm not sure if it'll be planet number 1 or planet number 2, and I was also kind of worried about planet number 3, just because I actually considered sending the Volatile Pyrovore to planet number 3, just to make sure that if Shadowsun were to go to that planet, I would not run any risk of her winning Taurus, drawing a bunch of cards, generating a ton of resources, and then potentially pulling out in the end here. But I sent my Warlord to planet number 3 to protect Taurus, just because I feel like if I'd have drawn any number of shield cards, I could have potentially beaten Commander Shadowsun at that planet. And then I sent my Stalking Lictor to planet number 1 just to try to guarantee that I could win those cards there. But my opponent is going to win at Aatrox Prime in regard to command, so this is going to be 1 resource and 2 cards for me. And I believe during a previous turn I actually forgot to trigger my Toxic Venomthrope in order to generate an infestation token at our planet number 2. It doesn't end up making any difference, but you know, more mistakes are never a good thing. So I draw my cards. I got a No Mercy, I got a Strangler Brood, and also a Brood Warriors, so it's nothing tremendously exciting to see. That copy of No Mercy could be pretty convenient if I could somehow manage to assassinate Shadowsun or kill off whatever big unit she has, but all of a sudden, once I realized that Commander Shadowsun is bloodied, she's really not doing a whole hell of a lot. So there's the recon drones, there's that Shadowsun stealth cadre, and given that I've only got that 1 Termagant horde, I'm not feeling great about my ability to win a battle at planet number 2, but I'm thinking it could be possible if I keep shielding, keep generating Termagants, just because my opponent has a 0-1, a 2-2, a 1-5, and a 1-1. Neither of us has anything great. I managed to trigger Eluith's ability. Once again, I was really hoping for an indescribable horror, but I will totally accept a regeneration, hopefully to be put onto, you know, Volatile Pyrovore or a Termagant horde, but battle is going to occur at Aatrox Prime, and then a battle is going to happen at Taurus. I don't really have any hope of having fewer units at any point than my opponent, but seeing as how I've run out of Termagant tokens, I'm going to generate a few more of those for myself, and then use them as a bit of a token bank, and unfortunately my HQ is not full of Termagant tokens like that, but my horde does manage to generate 1, and once again, to my immense frustration, the ambush platform exhausts, and a goddamn copy of Gun Drones hits the table. My opponent, of course, happens to have, you know, the initiative at that planet, and that means the copy of Recon Drones is going to be able to trigger its Area Effect 2 volley, and once again, I'm completely at the mercy of just that horrific effect. So my Ripper Swarm is going to be killed, my Venomthrope is dead, my Termagant token is slain, and that just really sucks. So I'm left with nothing but my Termagant horde here. It's going to end up taking a couple points of damage. And now I'm just thinking, I really can't do much, but I at least get 1 opportunity to attack, and my opponent only has 2 cards in hand. He probably doesn't have a shield card. So I'm going to go ahead and take a swing with my Termagant horde at that recon drone, so I can at least kill it off and get rid of that copy of gun drones. My opponent uses a 2 shield value repulsor impact field, so I exhaust my Stalking Lictor and employ a No Mercy. I cancel that shield card, I kill those drones, and the gun drones are now basically discarded, so I count that as a bit of a victory. Hooray for me. But of course the stealth cadre takes a swing and blows up my Termagant horde there, so Aatrox Prime is now going to be his to fire. He's ultimately going to choose Taurus as opposed to my HQ, so I discard my Termagant Sentry, and that's going to be yet another point of damage put onto the Swarmlord. So, his units are left at our soon-to-be first planet. Commander Shadowsun escapes to her HQ, and now we're about to enter what could well be the very last round of the game, just because I've got two technology icons. I've only got one material icon, but if I win the battle at Aatrox Prime, then that to me is going to be the game. I've got 7 resources relative to my opponent's 9 resources, but I have 10 cards compared to his 3 cards, and I've got just a surplus of different units available to me. So I'm trying to think, what exactly do I want to do? I've got 2 Brood Warriors, 2 Strangler Broods. I've got, 3 Brood Warriors. I've got a Regeneration, and I've got a Virulent Spore Sacs. I put out my copy of Brood Warriors, and my thought process here was I want to play as many not Virulent Spore Sac units as possible, so that I can maybe encourage my opponent to fill the first planet with low-cost units that maybe only have a single hit point. Things like Vashia Trailblazer, perhaps, something like that. My opponent puts out a copy of the Heavy Marker Drone affixed to my Volatile Pyrovore, which is an interesting choice for him. It's going to make it much easier to kill because it takes double damage, but that's another 2 shield icon card that my opponent does not have the opportunity to have, and because I waited until late in the combat round before considering playing out my copy of Regeneration, whereas I'd have once considered putting that onto the Volatile Pyrovore, I'm now much more strongly considering putting that onto one of my copies of the Brood Warriors. Just because basically if I make them into an unappealing target, it makes my Volatile Pyrovore an all the more appealing target, and of course anything that attacks it, deals a killing blow, is in all likelihood going to be taking a lot of damage in return. So I take control of that Heavy Marker Drone just for the ease of moving it. I decide to put that copy of Regeneration into play, fixed to one of my Brood Warriors my opponent has now passed, and I finally put that copy of the Virulent Spore Sacs into play. So we're about to go into command here, and I'm deciding, what do I want to do? Do I want to send my Lictor to planet number 2? Do I want to send my Lictor to planet number 1? I was very much considering planet number 2 for my Lictor, just to make sure that I deprive him of drawing that 1 additional card, but I'm thinking to myself, you know, he's got a 2/2, he's got a 1/1, his commander is a 1/5, the Stalking Lictor is a 1/4, it's probably much better sent to the first planet. So my Lictor shows up, my Swarmlord shows up, Commander Shadowsun also shows up. I frankly wasn't sure if she was going to go to that planet or not. I end up getting 1 card and 1 resource, whereas my opponent draws nothing, and even though I've only got 16 cards remaining in my deck, I've still yet to see a copy of Indescribable Horror. So there's no events, no actions played out by either player during our command phase, and we're about to move into combat. He does not decide to use mobile, and I'm about to blow up my Virulent Spore Sacs here. We've yet to see any kind of frustrating ambush platform play. So the Spore Sacs blow up. That's going to be 1 point of damage to each of his units, and he ends up expending another copy of Crushing Blow in order to negate a point of damage to his Vashia Trailblazer there. So it's going to be 1 point of damage to his Stealth Cadre, 1 point of damage to Commander Shadowsun, and I use my first combat turn to retreat, and I've got a wealth of units left at that planet, but, you know, I'm not out of this yet, so we've got to kind of slug it out. It's going to be my opponent's opportunity to attack. My Brood Warriors are going to take some damage, and because I have no shield cards whatsoever in hand, I've got no option but to just allow that unit to be destroyed. So that is outright killed, and I'm left with a 1/4 attacker and a 2/4 attacker. I use my 2/4 to take out his Vashia Trailblazer just to ensure that I can get rid of it, whether he happens to have a 1 shield icon card or not. I accidentally exhausted my regeneration, so I go ahead and compensate for that. My opponent takes a moment to decide. I don't know if he happens to have a 2-shield icon card or not. It turns out he does, and now I know that my opponent has absolutely no cards left in hand, and I know that at this moment, this is just going to be the home stretch. All I have to do is survive. So the Vashgal Trailblazer is going to end up putting out 2 points of damage to my Volatile Pyrovore, but there's not going to be any kind of nasty Tau tricks. There's not going to be anything done by the ambush platform, so my Stalking Lictor takes a swing, and I know that I'll be able to kill his stealth cadre. So my opponent has no option but to allow that attack to go through. It's going to be destroyed, and that means all of our units are about to ready, and twice it seems I made that mistake of prematurely readying. So Commander Shadowsun takes a swing, kills off my Volatile Pyrovore, and that's a very interesting choice there, but Shadowsun ends up taking 3 points of damage in return, and now I'm going to basically just ready all of my units, and at this point, all I need to do, the initiative token is in my hand. I guess I just have to kill off Commander Shadowsun. I decide to take a swing. Commander Shadowsun is going to take 2 points of damage. So, at this point, I've killed Commander Shadowsun. Had I not been able to do so, I'd have still hit 3 blue technology icons. I'd have managed to win the game. So, like I mentioned before, definitely some misplays, definitely some mistakes and suboptimal plays. Hopefully nothing game invalidating occurred, but thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your patience with those errors. Thank you to Alexander for allowing me to record this game. Very well played on his part, so good game. Thank you to Alexander for allowing me to play him, to record this match. Thank you for viewing. Thank you for your patience. I suppose in retrospect, the Swarmlord was absolutely fantastic fun to play, even though this game started off bad for me. The Termagant tokens were a blast. I very much enjoyed those hordes. So I'll just end this video by saying, if you enjoyed this content, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you've not done so already. Or if you are already subscribed, you're always encouraged to share this content, as the more eyes there are upon these videos, the more people might end up giving Conquest a try, like what they see, buy into the game, and of course, join our community and send the message to Fantasy Flight Games to continue to support this fantastic product. If at any point you'd like to get in touch with me, feel free to do so through Twitter or through Facebook. I'm always out looking for games to spectate, commentate, and record, and if at any point you feel like donating $1 or $2 to my cause on a strictly monthly basis to help me recover some of my file hosting and operating expenses, I'd be both honored and humbled were you to visit my Patreon. But in any case, thank you once again for watching. Thank you a final time for your patience with those mistakes, and as ever, be sure to check back in again soon for ever more Conquest LCG content to come.